Hello everyone. This isn't how I usually start off a video, but this weekend, July 15th, 2018, one of the streaming communities I'm a junior moderator for, called ChillNation, is teaming up with another community called CroftNation in support of the charity Macmillian Cancer Support. In this video's description below, please check for a link to a fundraiser page for Macmillan. It's a British charity that helps people who get cancer overcome the disease. Cancer is a personal battle for me. At one point or another, almost everyone in my family has had it. My mother died of it when I was 21. My wife's father died of it around the same time. My father had it, but he had a liver transplant to get through it. All my grandparents had it. So if you have the resources to spare, please help out. If you don't, that's not a problem. I just appreciate you taking a moment to hear why I'm involved in this fight. And if you can spread the word to other people, that would be great too. Thank you very much. Enjoy the video. And as always, La Paz. Well, hello there and good day. Thank you for joining me. I am Frost PDP, and today we're going to continue our talking about tutorial on Crusader Kings 2. This time we're dealing with the Crown Laws button, which is F4 on your keyboard. So you just mash F4, you get the laws. So what are laws? Well, as you might be able to guess by the name, the law of a realm is basically the particular laws that you and your vassals are sort of obligated to follow. But as you can see, there's 4 tabs of them here, and on top of that, there's all different types of laws based on which layer of feudalism you belong to. So because I am an independent duke, only my ducal laws matter. But if I were in a kingdom, my king's laws would matter just as my laws might matter. Now, that in mind, the first thing you see is inheritance laws, and this is where a lot of players really, it's hard to explain, but we have sort of a love-hate with inheritance laws, because these are the laws that determine, as the screen says, how succession is done and who will inherit what. And you might think, well, that's pretty easy. Your eldest son inherits everything, ta-da, and that's an option, but that's not the only option. In fact, I can't even show you all of the options because there's so many of them based on real historical inheritance systems that did not exist in feudal Europe. Let me say that again. I can't even necessarily show you all of these options, like how republics handle inheritance, for example, because I'm not a republic. Alright, with that in mind, this right here, this big thing called agnatic cognatic gavelkind. We talked a little bit about this in previous episodes, but this is where the rubber meets the road. As it says, the titles of the ruler are divided among his children, with the oldest getting the primary title. If the ruler has no children who can inherit, the law defaults to primogeniture. That's a whole other word, we're not going to get into that. You get no prestige penalty for having unlanded sons, and can have a 30% larger domain. Gavelkind is very popular with everyone except the oldest child. Destruction of titles while under Gavelkind succession is not allowed. Women can inherit, but only if there are no eligible males. What does that mean? Well, Gavelkind is historically a system that is seen as kind to those who are not the eldest child. The most famous example of Gavelkind in action is the splitting of Charlemagne's reign, or his kingdom's empire, after a few generations. I believe his son, he only had one eligible son, but that son had 3 sons, so they split the empire of France, or the Holy Roman Empire, whatever you want to call it, into 3 sections, east, west, and middle, and it did not go very well, particularly for the middle. It basically means that everyone gets a share, and while the eldest son may inherit the primary title, say the duchy, the other sons may inherit other things and even become independent of the eldest son, meaning you have to waste time re-marshalling your troops together. So that's Gavelkind for you. It's got benefits. You can have a larger domain and you're going to have vassals like you. I mean, I can demonstrate that real quick. This guy likes me because I have Gavelkind succession +5. Now, it's a popular thing, but it's popular specifically because it weakens you in the long term. It makes you a weaker dynasty to deal with. So your vassals have more opportunities for shenanigans, stuff like that, right? This is your heir. What it sounds like. This is who you're going to play next. these are your pretenders. These are people that are going to have good claims on your land to try to mess you up. Notice how I still have a spy master for, a pretender for a spy master, but he's way down the line of inheritance. He'd have to really try. What are these? Well, gender laws are. Ours are agnatic cognatic, which means men first, then women. Agnatic simply means men only. And absolute cognatic is women inherit on the same grounds men do. Theoretically, you could have a matriarchal system, but it's a little ahistorical. It didn't really happen in Europe. Succession laws. Okay, so remember how this is Gavelkind? We are in Gavelkind. Well, these are all the different type of governments you can have. The first one on the list, and by the way, there are requirements for these. You can't just click a button and be there. The most popular, or least popular, is has reigned for 10 years. You have to reign for 10 years before you can even change one of these. So if you inherit as an old person, you might not get a chance. Or if you're assassinated, you might not get a chance. Anyhow, so elective Gavelkind. You would think this is the same thing, right? Because Gavelkind, it's not. Elective, and there are two types of elective, by the way, that we're concerned about with a feudal character. I mean, republics have their own system. It's elective Gavelkind and elective monarchy, and in both cases, characters who are eligible to vote, not necessarily council vote, but if they own a certain tier of land, if they are duke, if they're a count, if they are part of your dynasty, they get to vote on who your heir will be. Which means you might have a guy with amazing stats. Like this guy, he's kind of terrible. But I might have a guy with 20, 20, 20, 20, 20. If he's not popular, he's not winning. That's a problem, because if I want him to inherit, and he could even be my eldest son, but if it's elective, not going to happen. So, elective Gavelkind is what it sounds like. Basically, instead of it just being the eldest son, all of these guys are eligible candidates. One gets picked, then it Gavelkinds. Okay. Seniority. The oldest member of the dynasty inherits all titles. Your oldest child will greatly approve of this, but the other members will disapprove. So when it says oldest member of the dynasty, that's a little weird wording, because I've never used this because it's not my style. But hey, guess what? That means basically the oldest person in your dynasty gets. I believe the Mongols started off with this, which is an interesting concept. The oldest person of the dynasty, so it could be a brother, it could be an uncle, it could be anybody. If they are the oldest person of your dynasty, they get your land. Interesting, right? It's historically it existed, but not really in feudal Europe, not unless there was no clear inheritance, and I would not use it. Then you get to primogeniture. The oldest child of the ruler inherits all titles. Your successor will like the law, but all other members of your dynasty will slightly disapprove. This is where you want to go. One way or another, you want to get to primogeniture. In my personal opinion, if you're playing this the way most people play this game and you're trying to centralize power, you want this. Now, when you're a better player, when you've played for a lot of hours and you want to try something different, by all means, try something different. I'm not telling you not to experiment and have fun. I'm just saying that for a beginner, you want to get the primogeniture because it controls your titles. You can control inheritance very easily, and that's one less really important game mechanic weighing on you as you try to figure out the game. Elective monarchy, we already kind of talked about this. Basically, you know, each title gets a vote. So if you're the duke, you might get 2 votes. If you're a count, you might get 1. However it works. And basically, you vote for who you want to be the king. So you nominate somebody, but someone else can nominate someone. There's a vote when you die. And by the way, you know the result of the vote at any given time. You will be able to tell who's voting for who and what their numbers are. So you will know if there's a 2-2 tie, you will know who to maybe assassinate to make that a 2-1 victory for your guy. The vote happens immediately when you die. You die, and at the same exact time, the vote is held. That's not how they did it in history usually, but that's just a game mechanic thing. Finally, there's Tanis Tree, which is By the way, really only exclusive to like the Irish cultures, I think. I'm not sure. And it's the ruler and all vassals at 1 or 2 ranks below can nominate an heir, the Tanis, from among members of the ruling dynasty. Vassals will tend to favor older members from other branches of the family, especially claimants. So basically, this is like, hey, if you're part of the dynasty, you might inherit, especially if you're older. It's a way to keep relatively stable people on the throne, but it gets confusing because you don't necessarily play as your child, which is just the thing. Then there's Ultimogeniture, which is another weird one. It's the opposite of Primogeniture. With Ultimogeniture, the youngest child inherits. So let's say you have 2 sons. One of them is 22 years old, has great stats. Your character is like 70, he's about to die. Somehow your wife gets pregnant. You have a 1-year-old son. You die, that 1-year-old son inherits. Oh yeah, and he's got a 22-year-old older brother, probably with a lot of power built up, that's ready to assassinate him to take the throne. Yet not the recipe for stability that I would suggest. Anyway, if you look at these, if you hover over the question marks, you will see conditions. Some of them are really easy. You just have to reign for 10 years, click a button, done. Others have a little more complicated stuff, like you need a certain type of administration, for example. Like you might need late feudal administration to enact primogeniture. You get that through technology. I'll show you really quickly, but this isn't a technology primer. You get that through legalism. Legalism 3 is late feudal administration and other stuff. So that's succession law. And even this, you have to have a vote, I think. I know in the old days you had to have a vote. Maybe they've changed that, maybe they haven't. But when this button is green, you may click it. Once you click it, you're stuck with it. At least for 10 years. So just think your decisions through. And that covers inheritance laws. That's one branch of this 4-branch mess we have here. Next up is realm laws. Okay. Civic and religious law. There's a whole bunch of these. Some of them are more for role-playing purposes or for, getting access to better commanders and stuff. Some of them are for how you govern your country. Let's start with centralization. It is what it sounds like. A centralized state is important for the least to grow powerful, but a decentralized state is easier to maintain. Typically, you will start off on the left of any of these sliders, and you'll try to move to the right. Sometimes you don't necessarily want to go to the right. Either you don't need to, or it might not benefit you. So centralization, for example, you start off on low, decentralized. The realm is entirely decentralized and can effectively handle many vassals. Your vassal limit is +10. And you're saying, wow, this is the beginning? You get a plus already? Yeah, you do, but it's a scale, right? So when you go up to low centralization, your domain size, your maximum domain size increases. So in this case, it would be from 3, and you can check that by looking up here. This is the domain size, 3. It'd go to 4. You'd be able to hold 1 more domain, which is awesome, right? But your vassal limit bonus goes from +10 to +5. So you'll actually lose. See how it says at the very bottom of this tooltip, laws +14? You'd actually end up with laws +9 instead. So that's the thing to be careful of. As you go further along this slider, you gain more personal domain, but you lose vassal limit. So this is just a thing to keep in mind. Status of women. It is what it sounds like. Medieval societies don't really treat women well. They don't get a lot of power. Nothing like that. You can change this over time. As you gain more tolerance technology, you will gain access to these technologies. For example, women are allowed to be spy masters, women are allowed to be chancellors and stewards, women are allowed to be marshals and commanders eventually. Some cultures allow female commanders anyway. There's certain Norse things that you can do where you can have a shield bearer or whatever it's called, shield maiden, who is allowed to be a commander based on religious reasons. In some cases, women are allowed to hold religious titles. Religion does play into it. Your government type does too. I don't believe there's any way that you can have a female character inherit a republic. It has to be male, no matter what your rights for women are, which I personally think is bad game design. But, I don't know, Paradox, please fix? Anyway, so the point is, as you go up this chain, you are giving more power to women to do things in your realm, which is great because women are half your population. And if you just search through, statistics, you may find let's say this woman here, she's got a 21 in stewardship. She would be a great steward, a fantastic steward, but she can't be a steward because she's a woman. These laws allow you to change that, so you can eventually have women as stewards. It's very good. It's not necessarily a priority. You might prioritize centralization or revoking titles over status of women, but it's still important to know. With that in mind, we move to revoke title. You start off at none. You are not allowed under any circumstances to interfere in the ownership of a title. In other words, even if this guy tries to kill you, even if this vassal of mine tried to kill me, I could not strip his title away. Yeah, I would literally just want to click this button right now, because revoking titles is key to getting stronger, especially when it's something that's held within your capital duchy. But even when it's just an opportunity to put a title in the hands of your dynasty versus in the hands of someone else's dynasty, if they commit a crime, you can strip their title for free. I can't tell you exactly how the mechanic works because it's a little hard to see from the surface level. But if you catch somebody plotting against you, and we'll go over intrigue and plots and all that another time, but you can eventually discover plots, and then you can imprison people. And once you imprison people, you can take their titles, assuming this is allowed. Yeah, this is an important thing. This is something you want. You want this as soon as you can get it. But anyway, once you have it allowed, you are allowed to revoke titles. You have to be careful, because if you try to revoke a title from someone who hasn't done something wrong, you incur what's called tyranny. Tyranny is bad. It's a very significant penalty to opinion. And I know I haven't talked about opinion much because I feel like that's one of the most basic mechanics of the game, but just a reminder, opinion is how much someone likes you. So you see how there's the short reign and the foreigner penalties, -9s? -40 would be really bad, because if people don't like you, they don't pay you taxes, they don't send you as many troops. It's just a problem. You want people to like you. The easiest way to get them to like you is to give them land, but sometimes it's not available. But if they commit a crime, you're allowed to revoke for free. Always check, but generally speaking, you're allowed to revoke for free when they commit a crime. And then there's religious control, which is really simple. It's just if somebody is of an infidel religion, so let's say I'm a Catholic, they're Sunni, I can strip their land for free. I won't incur tyranny. This is something to keep in mind more if you are a vassal to someone of a different religion, because if they have religious control mandate, you're always a whim away from losing your title. Anyhow, administration. So feudal society is basic. Late administration allows additional succession laws, and vassals who refuse liege inheritance and interference in wars are seen as traitors. Okay. Then there's Imperial, which is what it sounds like. It's very far up the tech tree. We're not going to worry about it, because by that point you'll have most of the stuff understood. You need a lot of specific things to get it. Your feudal vassals will dislike you for this. It's a permanent -10, but your vassal limit goes up by 25. So once you get larger, this is where you want to go. And that covers realm law. So we've covered inheritance law and realm law. Let's go to obligations. And thankfully, this is a relatively easy slider to deal with. Now, by the way, it's worth noting that once you pass one of these laws, we'll talk about that at the end. Once you pass one of these laws, you get locked out from passing laws in the future. So you have to pick your steps. So in other words, if you click this button, pass the law, which everyone will support this law, by the way. I don't know why. It's very favorable to them, I guess. I'm guessing everyone will oppose this. Yeah. So once you pass a law, it may not be possible. You can't just go click, 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 click. You know, you have to take time to do it. Anyway, what are these? Well, these are basically sliding scales. They're percentages. You start off in the middle on most of these things. Balanced obligations, where nobles pay a certain amount of tax and a certain amount of minimum levy, which again is troops. So your vassals have to give you a certain number of troops. And you can shift this around. So nobles are feudal vassals, burghers are city vassals, churches are church vassals, and tribal are tribal vassals, in case you have any of those. And the two directions you can really go in is, do they pay you more in taxes, or do they give you more troops? This is important to understand, because noble vassals give you troops in the first place. So you might want to shift up the number of troops they have to give you, because they produce a lot of troops. cities, burghers, produce a lot of money. You might want to shift the amount of money they have to give you. You get less troops, but you get more money to develop your provinces early on so you can have more troops. Basically, this is tax side, this is levy side. Have fun experimenting with this. Council. Remember how we have the council here and these guys and all of this stuff? These are laws governing your council. And this is a balancing act. There are some things that the ruler can do automatically. So the ruler can grant titles, has full authority. I want to give you this title, I give you this title, no one can stop me. If the council was to be empowered, and by the way, the council will always want to be empowered. They want more power just by default. Then you get a better vassal limit, right? If the council has more power, you do have a little higher vassal limit. But on the other hand, now your council gets to vote on what titles you get to grant out, and they might not want you granting titles to certain people. Especially if you're granting land to your dynasty, they will not like that. Execution. Right now the ruler decides, hey, if you're in prison and you've done a crime and I want to execute you, I can do that. You can empower them on execution. I almost never execute people, so this is an easy thing to give them if you need that, vassal limit for some reason. Imprisonment. Right now the council is empowered to vote on imprisonment. If I want to send someone to jail, my council has to agree. And the council usually resists giving up power. Ultimately, if you control everything else, ruler imprisonment sovereignty is X'd out, that's this. If I have control over ruler imprisonments, I can then shift my focus to saying, well, in fact, I want full authority in declaring war. Right now, my council votes on whether or not I declare war. If there's a target that I want to declare war on, but my council doesn't want me to, they can say no. There are ways around that. The most immediate of them is buying favors and then spending them, but generally speaking, you want to be able to control who you declare war on, because you don't want to have to manipulate your council into declaring war on an enemy when you have an opportunity. Finally, there's council power in general. Ruler has full authority over politics and law. Law changes cannot be voted on by the council. This is sort of like a holy grail. If you get this, you can click any of these buttons pretty much for free, as far as I understand it. I never bother with this because the council is easy to manipulate. Let's look at an example. Revoke Title. I want that because I hate to say it, guy, you're a loyal vassal and all that, and you're not a bad person. I have no problem with you. But if you look real quick, I am the Duke of Mumu. And if you look on the de jure duchies map mode, which you can find over here, it's the shortcut button I. The de jure duchy of Mumu is this. You zoom out, you see this, right? So I have the legal right to own all of this land myself, because I am the Duke of Mumu. But I have a vassal owning one of the counties, and I have an outsider owning the other. You better believe that I can declare war on this guy to de jure claim or force vassalize him. I own this land by default. At the very least, this guy should be serving me. But ideally, I own the land myself, so that I get maximum benefit from it. Because if it's owned by a vassal, I only get what the vassal's obligated to give me. So, going back to this, right? I want to be able to revoke titles, because if I ever catch this guy committing a crime, and you can usually tell right here or in the known plots thing, if I catch him committing a crime and I imprison him, I want to take his title and own it for myself, so that I am stronger. So I want the revocation law. But here's the thing, you see supporters. There's one guy, Lorcan supports it. There's one guy undecided, Flangot. There's 3 opponents. That's a problem. If you click on Council and you look here, you might get a better view of how this all works. This is Flan, he's pragmatist, he's iffy about it. This is Lorcan, he's a pragmatist. He can see that he might benefit from this someday, because by centralizing my power, I can maybe give him land. That's my guess. I don't really know what the AI's thinking on that calculation. That's my guess. I guess that's what it's trying to simulate. But these 3, these 2 are glory hounds. They want power. And this dude's a priestly guy. He doesn't want me to pull stuff from anyone. So the trick is going to be how do I get my council to like me? Generally speaking, that function is by favor. If you know that you have someone who is opposed to what you want to do, you can buy a favor from them. Now, I'm not going to go through this example the whole way because I would not initiate this process until I have the money to bribe everybody. You're basically bribing them. You're saying, hey, I'm going to give you money, you're going to give me a favor. Then once he affirms that he's let you buy a favor, you have to let time run to do that. Then you can call in Counsel Support, which is an option here, right? You can request Counsel Support, but this will say you owe him a favor. You would rather buy the favor first and then call it in than have you owe him one, so he can call it in on his terms, because he could call it in to ask you to grant him land or declare war on somebody, or he can call it in to make you start a vote on something you don't want to start a vote on. So you have to be very careful when you're giving favors out. It is better to buy a favor, especially for a law change. It is better to pay for a favor up front than it is to ask for a favor later. One thing to keep in mind is that people with landed titles will cost more to buy a favor. You see here how this guy cost 83 when the only other guy cost 40? Yeah, he's more powerful, he costs more. Also, malcontents and sometimes others will not want to let you have a favor. They'll say, no, my political interests are different than yours. Giving you a favor weakens me, I'm not doing it. Yeah, I can say that. But once you have favors accumulated, you can call them in and start a vote. So let's do an example of that. I'm going to do something exactly what I told you not to do. No, you know what, because then I'd have to let time run. We'll do that later. Remind me in the comments, hey, Frost, fix this. So anyway, basically the council can also work with each other. If you have a malcontent, he will try to get votes to force you to make votes. So keep that in mind. Anything else with laws? Council obligation. That's pretty much it. Basically, whenever you want to change the laws, hover over whatever it is, the button that you're trying to click, like this one. See who your supporters are. So I can click this button and pretty much automatically get it, because everyone supports this. It does me no immediate good, because I only have one county and I can't get more counties, so having more domain is like, what's the point? But it's good to know. Whereas Revoke Title, people are against it, and I have to bribe them into being for it. Generally speaking, your vote is always a yes, so if you bribe if you have 2 supporters and yourself against 2 opponents, you'll win. And I think undecided voters can abstain if they don't have a decision. But even if it's a tie, right, and you're like, well, it's a tie, I could win. If there's an undecided voter and he votes against you, you lose the vote and you're locked out from voting again for 5 years. So just keep that in mind. As you're working with the council, you always want to go into a vote knowing you're going to win. One final thing, and I know we're going to talk about factions a bit later, although it's really threadbare at this point. So in a way, I'm talking about factions now. Factions are basically political groups that get together. They're your vassals, they'll get together. They have to be independent under you. So if you have a duke who owns a count, that count cannot be in a faction against you. But that duke can be in a faction against you. If you have an independent count that reports directly to you, like this guy reports directly to me, you can see that here. Star means this is me. He's a count, he reports to me. I could be an emperor, but if this count reports to me, he can faction against me. And factions can demand political change. For example, they might demand Gavelkind. They might demand a different person be the emperor. They might try to install a claimant. Most often, they will try to get council power. Here's the thing about that. It's usually acceptable to take a hit to council power if it prolongs a war. They will usually only fire when they are 100% of your strength. I might have to use a different save to demonstrate this, but just know that when you have a faction brewing against you, if you have to give up council power, it's okay. It's not the best thing in the world, but all you're doing is losing one of these, plus you're gaining 2 vassal limit, which might be useful, depending on your circumstance, if you're maxed out, because it'll allow you to split up your vassals' realms a bit and make yourself stronger. But you can always reverse it 5 years later. It's always okay to take a hit on something reversible. It's not okay to take a hit on something like changing a claimant. So, in case you get a faction pop up, check. Anyway, I'm going to stop here. I have to go to work, and anyway, I'm done with the lesson. I want to thank you all so much for joining me. If you enjoyed this series, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. It really does help the channel grow. It lets me know what you're watching so I can make more of it. And I really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And as always on this channel, La Paz. Next time we do technology.